Assalamualaikum and good day. My name is Nurdania binti Azaman with matric number AE10066. Today I will explain about the experiment 4, which is basic statistical sampling. Okay, here is our group member, me, Nurdania, Nurhidayah Najwa and Nushahirah. Next. The objective of this experiment is to observe the value of statistical analysis as sampling technique. Next, to gain experience of analysis by analyzing experimental data. And lastly, to acquire the knowledge of sampling technique to be implemented in future undertakings and experiments. Okay, here is the normal distribution curve. Then here is the equation of mean, deviation, average deviation, standard deviation. Okay, here is the list of equipment. Firstly, we have a PC or the laptop that running Microsoft Windows. Next, the composition register of sync color code value and any circuit simulation software such as Proteus, Multisim, PSpice or MATLAB. Next. Okay, the conclusion of this experiment is, in conclusion, a statistical analysis on various samples of different size have been performed. That's all from me, thank you.
My name is Nushahirah binti Rahmat, matric number AE200019, and I will present the activity 1 of lab 4. This is the sampling table. We use 3 samples of resistor value. This is the histogram of sample 1 with a smooth line, and this is the histogram of sample 1 with smooth line and also 3 divided by. Next is the histogram of sample 2. This is the histogram of sample 2 with smooth line, and this is the histogram with 3 divided parts. Next is the histogram of sample 3. This is the histogram with a smooth line, and this is with the histogram with the 3 divided parts. Next is the average deviation and the standard deviation. For sample 1, the average deviation is 0.1079 and the standard deviation is 0.1412. For sample 2, the average deviation is 0.1455 and standard deviation 0.1866. For sample 3, the average deviation is 0.1540 and the standard deviation is 0.1981. And the rating of the sample, the best rating sample is the sample 1, the second best is sample 2, and the worst is sample 3. For the discussion, the statistical analysis is frequently performed on samples of every large quantities to determine the probable variation in values of the entire lot. In this activity, statistical analysis on different samples of resistor value was conducted. Thus, based on the experiment run, we obtained the respective histogram of each sample with their standard deviation and average deviation value. Therefore, from the result gained, we are able to determine the best, second best, and the worst sample set. The rating was determined as the nearer the value of the standard deviation to 0, then the sample is the best. So from here we got that the best sample is sample 1, followed up by sample 2, and the worst is sample 3. Thank you.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Nurhidayah binti Shaudin and my matric number is AE190039. This is activity 2 for lab 4. Question number 1, differentiate between D and S. Standard deviation is the measure of variability that shows how typical a data point is given the means, and it is used to understand the probability of a given point being included in a probability distribution, while average deviation is an approximate measure of the variability per value within a dataset. This means that it is an approximate measure of how far, on average, each value in a dataset is from the mean. Question number 2. Discuss the results obtained for each D and S. For sample 1, the average deviation is 0.1079 and 0.1412 for the standard deviation. Next, the value of average deviation and standard deviation for sample 2 are 0.1455 and 0.1866. Lastly, for sample 3, the average deviation value is 0.1540 and the standard deviation value is 0.1981. Question number 3. Give overview on the selection of the best sample, the second best sample, and the worst sample. If the value for average deviation and standard deviation is in one sample is near to 0, it can be chosen as the best sample. Based on the exercise, sample 1 is the best sample, following by sample 2 as second best sample, and lastly sample 3 as worst sample. Lastly, question number 4. Conclude the observation and findings from the statistical analysis of this exercise. In lab exercise 4, we focus on basic statistical sampling. There are 3 samples of resistor value chosen based on each group member's name. From the value of resistor, a histogram was plotted for each sample and the value for average deviation and standard deviation was obtained. Based on the value of average deviation and standard deviation, the best, second best, and worst sample were chosen. Overall, we can conclude that sample 1 is the best, sample 2 is the second best, and sample 3 is the worst sample. And this is the references.